All right.
Hey
There we
everyone,
go.
it's Evan Kirstel. I'm here today with a very interesting guest and company, Paul Sparta, CEO and chairman of VBrick, a company you're going to learn a lot about. Paul, how are you?
Doing well, Evan. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. So this is a little ironic as we're live on video talking about video in the enterprise. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because I have become a bit of a video file and a live streamer. And of course, we all know about live streaming and YouTube and consumer video. But let's talk about enterprise video. Maybe you could introduce yourself first and your mission at VBrick.
Well, again, I'm Paul Sparta. I'm the chairman and CEO of VBrick. I've been an investor as well. Just took over as CEO in late October of last year, and it's been a ton of fun. And I really love the mission of the company. So I'm having a good time. I've got a lot of other varied interests outside of running VBrick, but right now that's a main focus, and again, having a good time, great team, really enjoying what we're doing so far.
Yeah, I've been so impressed with what you're doing. So let's dive right in because enterprise video streaming is, a huge market, particularly these days as we emerge from the pandemic. Total addressable market of over $20 billion. So a really big deal. And yet there is no single equivalent to a YouTube or an Instagram in the enterprise video space. So why is that? Tell us a little bit about the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, the enterprise video marketplace is probably one of the most unusual markets in that it's really been held back and slowed down in a way that almost seems like it couldn't be real. And part of the reason for that, I mean, is that what we're doing right now. We're live streaming, we're going out over LinkedIn, we're doing all that. But for the individual, live streaming and video on demand is arbitrarily perfect, right? It works perfectly well, and there's no there's no problems. We have arbitrary amount of bandwidth. Everything works well. It's very simple. But every single thing that one can do in the enterprise becomes more complex. And video is absolutely becomes extremely complex during the, when you start doing it over the enterprise.
Yeah, so the potential is there to embed video in all kinds of business processes, the front of the business, you know, education, learning, sales, marketing, internal communications. We understand the power of video, but why is it not yet ubiquitous within enterprises? Is it just complexity? Is there something else going on?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. One, so, like I was saying, any given thing that you do over the enterprise becomes arbitrarily difficult. And so it could be, even the simplest process, like how do we do email? I mean, everybody can sign up to a Gmail, right? It becomes difficult. Well, so let's talk about the various things that make things difficult. For the one thing, there's two really aspects of it. There's video on demand and access to existing content, and then there's streaming, which is live access. So the first problem with the enterprise is permission, scalability, and ownership of data. Not everybody's allowed to just live stream on a private network anytime they want to and start talking to everybody, and suddenly I want to broadcast to 5,000 people on my network. We'll come back to some of the technical issues associated with that. And then similarly, video on demand, not all of the content is supposed to be seen by everyone. There's permission, there's ownerships, who can create video, what kind of content is appropriate, what kind of IP is on there. So there are a whole range of business process issues that have to be addressed in order to do video at scale, just from process, permissions, ownership. Then we get into the really difficult portion, which is how do we deal with private networks? Private networks are locked down. You just don't have arbitrary access to everything. They have sensitive mission critical applications. If you're a retail company, you've got point of sale networks. If you're a financial services company, you've got, very sensitive systems. You've got tons of PII. You don't know what's out there. Not to mention the fact that anybody that's tried to watch, I don't know, eight different Netflix shows at the same time in their single house,
Guilty as
realize,
charged. Yes.
yeah, there is no, yeah, like suddenly, oh, wait a minute, I don't have an arbitrary amount of bandwidth. I actually do have limited bandwidth. So so how do we get video out to an enterprise network that's multinational, is different network providers, and it's a really complex problem, and do that reliably on any device? So it becomes an incredibly thorny problem when you do it at scale. And we've done that for a long, long time. And I think enterprises have held off on trying to do this because there have been so many little dependencies. And so video in large enterprises tends to be in tiny little silos all over the place.
Yeah, it's interesting. Enterprises have held off doing a lot of things, and then the pandemic hit, and then now they're being
Yeah,
forced,
exactly.
or change is upon them. Seen like a dozen years worth of digital transformation happening in a couple years. Um, Making something simple is actually pretty hard. It requires a lot of expertise and pretty leading edge tech. Describe, your solution, and what's behind that really easy front end. It seems so easy, right? Video is
It
simple.
does. It seems so easy. You just want to click on something that I want to watch. I mean, we're used to, if you like the menuing idea that we have of what a Netflix interface looks like, or Amazon Prime, or pick any streaming provider, right? It's become pretty uniform and similar. You see your favorites, you see categories, and the VBrick interface looks very similar to that, except that we know who you are in the enterprise. We know what you have access to. We know what your organization's priorities are. We know what stuff is potentially mandatory. And furthermore, we might embed access to this sort of stuff inside other applications, like a learning management system or a call center management system. So we want it to be accessible where it needs to be accessible and when it needs to be accessible. So that's one part of it. But the other part of the solution, and when we look at our go-to-market, is really we have two major chunks. We have the enterprise video platform, which is a cloud-based, centralized, it's a completely modern SaaS application. And then we have our distribution and platform as a service, which is actually the extensible ability to embed this. And so what's really the magic sauce is, on the cloud, you've got a master repository where you've got all the scalability, where we run on AWS, like so many do. We use a lot of their services to scale. And that sort of keeps a master, secure, encrypted repository of all the video, all the streams, everything up there. And then part of the other secret sauce is that we have a very powerful multi-tiered distribution technology that starts with a traditional CDN, and then moves just inside the private network, barely into the closet, for something that's called an eCDN, an enterprise CDN. And this is where we make some magic happen, because we can actually cache video assets just inside the closet of the firewall. We can adapt video streams to different bit rates and different frame rates dynamically, depending on which the status of the network that they're on. And so this ability to sort of just touch the inside of the enterprise, and it's really the enterprise network itself, the infrastructure itself, allows us to distribute the video and make sure everybody's going to get that experience. So we can actually do things like live stream to 40, 50, 60,000 people, which we've done with many of our large customers. Yeah. So normally, if you try that, stand by to get a real nasty gram from your IT department when you blow up their network. But so a lot of it's just hard shut down, but we've been able to figure out that secret sauce. So it's a real combination of enterprise class business rules and cloud software that can be tightly integrated into other processes with this distribution technology that allows the video to flow everywhere and anywhere.
So important. I love the vision. Do you have any anecdotes, favorite customers, favorite verticals? What are you seeing in terms of adoption these days?
Well, we've got some great customers on the financial services market, side, enterprise customers like Morgan Stanley and UBS. And Morgan Stanley is actually a phenomenal story, because it is an enterprise-wide situation. When COVID hit, like many companies, right, it was just turn up the volume. Like, we need more streaming. We need whatever streaming service we're using, WebEx, Zoom, Teams, Microsoft Teams, they all just sort of, everybody just turned up the volume knob everywhere. And it happened with us too, within our existing client base in 2020. Everybody just said, I need more. Because we're all panicking a little bit. And then, but what Morgan Stanley, it's a financial services company. It's very diverse. They deal with tons of PII. They have huge regulatory exposure. So they just can't go wild with everything. So what's really great about their story is they use two different providers. They're kind of a Microsoft Teams inside and a Zoom outside shop, and on and off. So they use multiple platforms for the basic conferencing and meetings, which are not really that intensive unless they get large. But what they've understood is that they need the video assets, the streaming and the content wherever their processes are. So they utilize our SDK and our APIs so that wherever they need that content, they're going to put it right there. So if it's inside a custom, portal for the business, if it needs to be inside their CX cloud, if it needs to be inside a CRM system, if it needs to be inside a learning system, they can access the video safely and with proper permissions, integrated with all those other applications. And they're really forward thinking on understanding that video is a peculiar asset class that has to connect with everything that they do inside and outside their processes. And it needs to be scalable, and we just can't have it flying all over the place. And they also, last thing on a sort of a long answer is they also understand that the video contains corporate IP. This is really critical. I mean, we're strong in life sciences, companies like Pfizer, HCA, other healthcare providers. They hold a lot of sensitive information, and people oftentimes just record their live streams, record their WebEx and Zoom meetings without realizing that there's actual IP on there where we're talking about important matters. You've got senior people in the company, no one knows what's on there. So if you're not enriching the content at the same time, again, unlike the consumer platforms, if you're not transcribing, translating, analyzing what data is on there, you really don't know what your IP risk is and your privacy risk is within your organization.
Fascinating. And compliance alone, such a huge topic these days. Any examples of why in the past maybe video has failed to catch on? Was it implementation? Was it training and adoption, architecture? And what's changed? Why are companies now getting it right when it comes to video?
I think the first mega trend on why video really was sort of held back was that the grand truth of the matter is that private networks were built for companies before more modern architectures, right? So companies, yes, adopted LAN and WAN technology well before even the internet was a major thing, right? So we still have this trailing legacy. And then the public internet was able to accelerate much, much more quickly, right? Public bandwidth than private bandwidth is, because now you're really dealing with every company has its own physical infrastructure. We can push as much, and we should, as much to the cloud as we can, and we can push our data centers to the cloud. But physically, there's wires and Wi-Fi's in office buildings, in manufacturing plants, everywhere. And it just moves more slowly. So the first problem was, great, we've got this new thing called digital video, and we can have access to it. Where do we need it? In a factory somewhere. Well, we're going to put it on a box, and we're going to stick it in our IT closet in the factory. And then we're going to, it might be some older format like Windows WMV files or something. We're going to just shove it there, and we only have one application that can get to it. Well, how do I get it to the other part of the company? Oh gosh, well, we would have to upload it, and well, it's like 2 or 3 gigabytes worth of stuff, and well, then we'd have to install another app on the server over there. And here we are. It's somewhat laughable, because we still find in these large companies these islands. It's like searching for buried treasure chests of, oh, there's this app that used video for this one particular thing, and this stuff's all sitting here and nobody knows what's on it or what's out there. And so that's the number one reason things have been held back, because it was this sort of balkanized only app only apps that are fit for purpose. And then as conferencing became the most important thing, right? And the nice thing about video conferences, they're generally arbitrarily small, or you rarely see more than like 8 by 8 on our meeting platforms. I mean, yes, you can see some 16 by 16 every once in a while, but then we start all looking like postage stamps and people are flickering, right? And everybody in the modern world's used to this. And those technologies have gotten better and better and better, and there are more players and more diversified, and Wi-Fi has gotten better. But we still, when we start doing point to point, we really start clogging up around 16 by 16. But meetings became the easy focus. We know they're because they are arbitrarily small, we don't have to, there's not so much danger with them. So everyone has been focused on dealing with meetings. And then and as I say, with every enterprise software space, it's sort of vainglorious of any enterprise software company to think, geez, our stuff is so important, it's a priority, you ought to just buy it like that, right? Oh, every enterprise, it's so critical, you got to do this. Well, it's a sequence of things. It's like there are not other problems to solve other than what we're doing, right? And we're a particularly thorny problem because we touched the network process. It's not just like most apps are not bandwidth intensive, they're only process intensive. Right? They're implementation intensive, but they're not technically intensive. We're both. We've got to integrate in a lot of things. So all of this is sort of, held it back. But I do feel like with our larger customers that are out there really doing some cool stuff, the Disneys of the world and FedExes and such, they understand, wow, once we sort of relieve that pressure and we now can use video in all these different ways.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the
liberating
opportunity for 5G in the enterprise and turbocharging, creators within enterprises now, whether it's sales or marketing, and leveraging the power of gigabit Ethernet and 5G to really supercharge video use cases. So I'm starting to see it all over the place. So
Absolutely. I mean, we're used to being able to stream from our phone now, and now that's getting really, really easy to do and generally pretty reliable. So what's cool about that is those technologies are feed the beast, right? There's more and more demand pressing on content. And then there's some really other cool technologies that are out there, which are, how content creation tools are back in style, right? So we're not, a content creation tool per se. I mean, we obviously want to ingest video and process it, but there's some really cool, technologies. There's a great little company called Frame.io that was bought by Adobe, which is, a multi-person video and content creation tool. So the enterprise knows we've got to get content out there, and the content has to move. It's got to have video. It's got to have interactivity. It's got to have some power to it. So at some point, you have to deal with the problem we're trying to address, and you have to do it in a really sophisticated way technologically.
So exciting. Well, congratulations on all your success, onwards and upwards. And one last question. CEOs are notorious for overworking, working ridiculous hours to achieve their goals. So what do you do for balance? What do you do when you're not focused on the future of enterprise video for fun?
Yeah, well, a lot of people know this. I'm I'll sort of Ricky Bobby, and I'm a semi-professional race car driver.
That is exciting.
Yeah, so that's my release, and
although pretty intense, that's not exactly relaxing racing around the track.
It's super, super intense, and I think people don't realize how intense and sophisticated and difficult it is to do it at a high level. But one of the great things about it is, for me, because it's so intense, when you're in the car, the rest of the world melts away. It is you're just all you can every bit of your mental faculty is used towards trying to go as fast as you can, staying on the road and staying on the edge and being in the moment. So I love it. I love it from that perspective. But I'm also I'm like one of those people that I try to keep my calendar, like I work to not put stuff on my calendar. I think it's super important to be available to people. And the only way you can be, really, I think, without making yourself just, schedule driven and being forced and locked onto a calendar, is just to try to keep it as free as you can so that people know they can come talk to you whenever you want. And we do deal with things and do things, at the right place and time, and not just based on, my arbitrary agenda or what other people put on my calendar for me. So those are my two big things. Love to do racing and love to be available.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending this time, and I look forward to watching your success.
Well, I appreciate it. Really appreciate the time to talk about this, and I hope you'll be hearing more of us all over the place.
I'm sure I will. Take care.
All right. Thanks.